peacefully dreaming, and their tents in the rays of the clear autumn moon, and the light of the campfires are gleaming. There's only the sound of the lone sentry's tread as he tramps for the rock to the fountain, and thinks of the two on the low trundle bed, far away in the cot on the mountain, all quiet along the Potomac tonight. His musket falls slack, his face dark and grim, grows gentle with memories tender, as he mutters a prayer for the children asleep, and their mother may heaven defend her. The moon seems to shine as brightly as then, that night when a love yet unspoken leaped up to his lips, and when no murmured vows were pledged to be ever unbroken, all quiet along the Potomac tonight. Then drawing his sleeve roughly over his eye, he dashes off tears that are welling, and gathers his gun closer up to its place, as if to keep down the heart swelling. He passes the fountain, the blasted pine tree, his footstep is lagging and weary, yet onward he goes through the broad belt of light, towards the shades of the forest so dreary, all quiet along the Potomac tonight. Was it the night with that rustle of leaves? Was it moonlight so wondrously flashing? It looks like a rifle, a merry goodbye, and the lifeblood is ebbing and splashing. All quiet along the Potomac tonight, no sound save the rush of the river, while soft falls the dew on the face of the dead. The pickets off duty forever, all quiet along the Potomac tonight, all quiet along the Potomac tonight. Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah. We'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. The men will cheer and the boys will shout, the ladies they will all turn out, and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. Get ready for the Jubilee, hurrah, hurrah. We'll give the hero 3 times 3, hurrah, hurrah. The laurel wreath is ready now to place upon his loyal brow, and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. In 1861, hurrah, hurrah, that was when the war begun, hurrah, hurrah. In 1862, both sides were falling to, and we'll all drink stone wine when Johnny comes marching home. In 1863, hurrah, hurrah, old Navy ended slavery, hurrah, hurrah. In 1863, old Navy ended slavery, and we'll all drink stone wine when Johnny comes marching home. In 1864, hurrah, hurrah, it called for 500,000 more, hurrah, hurrah. In 1800 1865. They talked rebellion, strife, and one loud drink, stone wine, and Johnny comes marching home. Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah. We'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. The men will cheer and the boys will shout, the ladies they will all turn out and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. Get ready for the Jubilee, hurrah, hurrah. We'll give the hero 3 times 3, hurrah, hurrah. The laurel wreath is ready now to place upon his loyal brow, and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. In 1861, hurrah, hurrah, that was when the war begun, hurrah, hurrah. In 1862, both sides were falling to, and we'll all drink stone wine when Johnny comes marching home. Hurrah, hurrah, old lady.
All right, we're going to turn that down. Okay, so let's see. Okay, you look. It's hard to tell. Look, it looks different on the internet than it does here to us.
Well, just remember, my face is probably not going to be fixed unless you turn the screen off. So.
Okay. All right, I think it's fine. Okay. Don't need that. Okay. Very good. So then I've got my audio going. So like I said, it'll be a conversation, nothing too fancy.
All right.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, good.
Okay. So, just follow my lead.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right.
I like it that way.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios, high atop Baltimore Street, in a maximum security facility.
Nope, that's the wrong one.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, patrons, and welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg. And today we're talking about something I'm sure most of you have heard of. If you've listened to my narrative episodes, you've heard of them. If you've read More Than the Killer Angels, you've heard of them. But for those of you who haven't, that's okay. And welcome to the story of the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry. Who are they? Why do we care about them? What did they do? What was the big saber charge that they had? Did they save the day on Little Round Top? Did they end Pickett's charge? Or none of the above? We're going to find out with our next guest. And this is actually his first time on Addressing Gettysburg. Britt Isenberg, licensed battlefield guide extraordinaire. Britt, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Finally, everybody's said to me, how do you not know Britt? And I'm like, I never came across him. Like, I've seen you once out giving a tour.
So my plan to blend in is working. Okay.
not blend in, disappear. So I'm glad we finally got to meet, though, because everybody said that I would like you. And so far, I actually do. And then I just found out that we are going to be neighbors.
Yes, it's amazing.
We bought the house almost directly across the street from you.
Yeah, I don't know anybody else in Arendtsville, but it's nice.
Is that true?
It's finally nice to know anybody.
Okay, good. Because I was worried that I wouldn't know anybody. I'm going to have to make new friends. And, who wants to do that? So this is
great.
Perfect. All right, so the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry, they actually did not fight in the Battle of Gettysburg.
Correct.
I'm going to tell you what I know.
All right.
And then you're going to tell us. Well, let me see your book there.
Sure,
real quick. So Britt's got a book.
Well, that's what I was going to read from, so now I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'll give it back to you. Don't worry. 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry. And you can get that where now? Amazon, I'm sure.
Amazon, any place fine books are sold, I'll say.
All right, very good. So here's what I know. Weren't in the battle at all. Yet they have two monuments. Mm-hmm. One where George Washington's Sando was killed, right? And the other one not too far away. Mm-hmm. George Washington Sando was a local boy. The 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry was not a local regiment, correct?
Yes, they were.
They were. So, but when I say that, I mean they weren't militia.
Correct.
That's what I meant.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, it's a loaded question.
Well, I know it is. We're gonna, and you'll unpack it later.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. But it's not. It's okay. So they weren't in the battle, but it's not unusual for a regiment that was not here during the 3 days of battle to have a monument here.
This is true. Yeah.
That's an interesting thing. Like the 84th PA.
Yep.
They were in where? Winchester, I think, or not? I mean, Westminster.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Sando, like I said, was not a member of the. That's all I really know.
Oh well, this is fantastic.
Exactly. I mean, I know on the 26th, they got into some stuff with Early's guys and everything.
Fuss.
Yeah. And the whites Comanches and things, but like beyond June 26th, I know nothing about them. But that's what your book is about.
Yeah. So that's one of the early chapters. But.
What is Gettysburg is?
Yes.
Interesting.
Because the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry, their genesis is largely because of the Pennsylvania campaign.
So are they an emergency unit?
They are. It's comprised of companies that were militia cavalry companies that had offered their services to Governor Curtin. And, the question about whether or not they're local, what becomes Company B of the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry was formerly known as the Adams County Scouts, or Bell's Cavalry.
Yeah.
Robert Bell. Many of the other companies, half of the regiment that becomes the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry, were actually from Franklin County, just across the mountain.
Oh, okay.
So local in that they knew the landscape. They're very close. And maybe most importantly, for the sake of the Pennsylvania campaign, these guys know South Mountain, its passes, and Robert E. Lee's entry into the Keystone State.
Now, were these the guys that went and felled trees ahead of their advance? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Felling trees. They're out there scouting those passes, sending information through various channels that will in some ways be helpful because they'll make their way to Harrisburg, some of that news, and then some of it will be transmitted southward towards Westminster and eventually Washington, D.C. Sometimes the information goes nowhere at all, as we'll see on June 26th with Captain Bell and Sando.
Yeah. Now, so when do they kind of coalesce in this area?
The 21st?
The 21st, yeah.
So that is not until actually late summer of 1863, and it's only a couple companies. So the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry, after the Pennsylvania campaign is over, they'll actually unite for the first time in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And their first orders are to go to northeastern Pennsylvania.
For the big fight up there.
Yeah. What's happening in northeastern Pennsylvania?
Well, I mean, I don't know.
The draft riots.
I was going to say that's close to New York.
Yes. So,
okay.
Largely in the Scranton area.
Oh, they're having riots there too?
Yes.
Oh, see, you never hear that.
Yes.
Okay, so there's riots in other cities.
Yes.
Aha.
And actually, the first charge led by an officer in the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry is not against enemy combatants. It's against civilians
Rioters.
outside of Pottsville, Pennsylvania, who
Huh.
are there for a political rally, and they're there to disrupt it and shut it down.
So, okay, when they're here during the Gettysburg campaign, they're not all together.
Correct. They're operating independently.
So it's different companies
Yes.
elsewhere. So what companies are here besides Bell's?
So specifically in Gettysburg, that's it. There are companies
Bell.
on the other side of the mountain in Franklin County. There are at least 3 companies operating over there. Probably, if anybody's heard of them at all, it would be Captain Josiah Hullinger's, what becomes Company D of the 21st Pennsylvania
Okay.
Cavalry. They're operating right along the border there with Maryland.
So when you say company, what cavalry company is 100 something?
About 100 men, yeah. These have a little bit less because they're raised in the emergency. But,
Right. Okay.
yeah.
So that's where I was getting. So how big is Bell's cavalry?
So Bell's cavalry initially starts with 43 guys, and then within a week he's up to 78.
Oh, okay.
So
he's getting up there.
Yeah.
But these are not trained men.
They're not, well, I should say not trained, but they do have some experience because during the Maryland campaign the previous September, a lot of them had enlisted with Warren's Cavalry Company. So it's not great experience, but it's better than nothing, I guess is what I would say.
Bell's cavalry is raised in response to this emergency,
Correct.
or was it okay? So it wasn't even a local militia.
Nope.
That's been in existence.
Yep. It's just raised for the Pennsylvania campaign. He goes
And
to
who's Bell?
Harrisburg.
Why is he so special?
Yeah, so Robert Bell is a local farmer from Straben Township.
Okay.
Who had offered his services in September of '62. And that was really the only military experience he had had up to that point. Now, he's a local community leader. He's well known in Gettysburg, family lineage that's well known. But he goes to Harrisburg and talks to Governor Curtin the second week of June, 1863, and says, I want to offer my services to Pennsylvania. How can I help? There's not a lot of great information out there about maybe why he hadn't enlisted with a formal volunteer unit up to that point. We know this part of Pennsylvania was inhabited by a lot of Peace Democrats, copperheads, if you will, German descent farmers. Bell doesn't seem to fit that category, but with the exception of that stint in September '62, he holds out, maybe to take care of the farm and the family. He has a large family by that point. But when he gets to Harrisburg, Governor Curtin says, your services are needed down along the border. And he gives him permission to raise a company with the help of the local cavalry commander that's operating in Adams, Franklin, Cumberland County. So by June the 20th, there's a rally held here at the Adams County Courthouse just a few blocks away. And Major Haller is going to hold a meeting there. And
Granville?
Yeah, Granville Haller. And he's going to rouse some of these locals to the flag, and Bell will begin to draw recruits from those folks that say, hey, I want to help protect the borderland here and protect our homes. So that's where that initial kind of contingent comes from. That becomes Company B of the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry.
So they're in the 21st essentially on paper because the 21st is scattered about in different areas,
But
right?
it's still not the 21st yet.
It's not official. So when we refer to it as the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry in regards to the Battle of Gettysburg or the Gettysburg campaign, we're giving it its post-battle.
Correct.
Yes. So it wasn't known as anything.
Correct. They were just independent cavalry companies. Yep.
Okay. So later they're going to be sucked into what's the 21st.
Yes. And I think this would probably be a good time, too, to talk about the man who really kind of coalesces this unit, who doesn't make it into almost any Gettysburg history that I've ever read. His name is William H. Boyd.
Okay.
Who was a captain in the Lincoln Cavalry, which becomes the 1st New York Cavalry later.
Yeah.
But Boyd is by far my hero. I don't want to jump the show here too fast.
That's
but,
all right. So he's your hero for this, not just for the Bears.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That's well said. Yeah. William H. Boyd is not a native-born American. He was from Montreal, Canada, and he's born in 1825. He comes here as a teenager, just out of school, to Pennsylvania, and he starts a directory business. A directory business. What's a directory business?
Oh, like I guess it would have been like their version of a phone book.
He's the guy that starts what becomes the phone book.
Really?
Yes. Boyd's
really?
Directories. Yes. They operated well into the 20th century.
Yeah.
And he makes a really good living. We're talking this would be in the early 1850s. And with some of his family members who will follow him southward, they will set up directories for every city in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic.
Could you imagine the money they've made?
Exactly right. He's doing well for himself.
Holy crap.
And as the fires of war begin to get fanned, he attends a political rally with the main speaker, the keynote speaker, as Carl Schurz in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And he had adopted Philadelphia as his home at that point. This is in early 1861. We're talking mid-April. So what has just happened? The firing on Fort Sumter. And Schurz has been given permission to raise a personal bodyguard for the President of the United States. And Boyd wants in. And so a lot of the folks that attend the rally, with the accounts we have, were not fans of Carl Schurz. They didn't want to hear this German immigrant speaking publicly. And it works to Boyd's advantage because he stays around, he lingers there, and in the aftermath ends up having personal conversations with Carl Schurz.
Okay.
And Schurz really likes him. He's a big guy, 6'3", about 220 pounds. He had been a successful businessman, so Schurz had known of him. He knew he was reliable, and he says, yes, I'd love to have you help raise a company to protect the President of the United States. Because when you think about what's happening in that moment in the war, Washington, D.C. is potentially surrounded by the Confederacy if things play out in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
So Boyd goes to work, and just outside Philadelphia, within a week, he's got almost 200 recruits. But Schurz's path takes a different route. He ends up being sent to Europe as a foreign minister. And Boyd continues this work. He heads to Washington, D.C., and he is among the first troops that will arrive after the firing on Fort Sumter to protect the Capitol. In fact, there's a great little story. They're invited right into the White House. They go into the East Room, and President Lincoln wants to shake all of their hands as this group of first defenders. There are also many Pennsylvanians that are there. And Boyd is in there out of respect, not smoking his pipe. He was known as a pipe smoker. And President Lincoln walks up to him and doesn't put his hand out to shake. He asks for his pipe. And then he walks over to the fireplace and lights the pipe and returns to Captain Boyd. And he says, an unlit pipe does nobody any good, but specifically you. And then he shakes his hand. Strange coincidence. Try not to go down a rabbit hole. But the mantle from the East Room fireplace is at the Eisenhower farm. That very mantle that they stood under.
You're kidding me.
Yeah.
In the living room?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yep. Yeah. So anyway,
that's neat.
I'm sorry.
I
get excited about these things, but
well, the house that we're buying, apparently Mamie Eisenhower's doctor, that was his office.
I had no idea.
Yeah. Well, now you do. And the owner, the lady who owns the house now, I met her one day, and she's like, "Oh, I got all the stuff on the history of the house. I'll leave it with the house and everything." So
wow.
Yeah, so we'll find out more about it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I definitely want to come over now.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm just kidding.
Well, the doctor's office was built in 1950 something. So so I don't know. He probably made house calls. I'm sure the first lady's not coming to Arntsville.
Yeah. Well, maybe there's an opportunity for a plaque on your.
I know, that's what I said, how do we get designated a historic?
Yeah, around the corner, FDR spent the night there. Did you see that plaque?
No.
Yeah, it's on the Ortana Road when you're going towards the Round Barn, right when you come out of town.
Really?
Yeah. Now, nobody cares about any of this. But
I know, this is all neighborhood stuff.
Yes. Sorry, everyone.
So, all right. So now, all right. So Robert Bell, does he have any military experience?
William H. Boyd, you mean? Or
No.
Or
well, are you finished with Boyd?
No.
Oh, keep going
There's
with Boyd.
so much more.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Keep going with Boyd.
And then we'll come back to Bell.
Get to the phone books.
Okay.
How do we get to the phone books? No. Go ahead.
War's over. Sorry. So Boyd ends up commanding a company of cavalry.
Sorry, I have to laugh because this one wise ass commenting says, I wonder how long it will take for Britt to want to move. Like a month.
I already have to.
Give him a month. He just texted his wife. That's what the house on the market.
The phone's lighting up. No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So Boyd ends up commanding this company of the Lincoln Cavalry, and he leads supposedly, I don't know, I found some other sources that are somewhat contentious of this, but leads one of the first successful Union cavalry charges of the war. There were a total of about 100 guys involved.
Okay.
Down at a place called Pohick Church. And he, forever going into battle, will be given by his men what's called the Pohick yell. Anytime Boyd is there, they have a special yell just for him. I don't know what it sounds like. Maybe we could make it up here.
It sounds good.
But that's great. That's great.
That's what I think.
That's the best one I've ever heard.
Could you imagine a bunch of guys running at you on horseback going Pohick?
And I'm probably pronouncing the name incorrectly too.
Even better.
Yeah. So he does gain a little bit of a reputation for using cavalry in a different manner. He very much is poking at his superiors to go on scouting missions to gather information, intelligence, which, at that point in the war, when it comes to cavalry on the Union side, is not really a thing. They're there to run messages, to guard headquarters. And anyway, Boyd gets sent into the Loudoun Valley, and he is one of the first individuals charged with trying to capture the Gray Ghost or some of these guerrillas.
Okay.
And basically through the summer of 1863, that's his sole job. And he comes close. Have you heard the story about how Mosby gets treed in June of 1863 outside the Hathaway House? Well, so there's a contingent of Union troopers that show up at the Hathaway House just south of Middleburg, Virginia. And they walk in the front door, basically, and Mosby and his wife, Pauline, are upstairs. And Mosby climbs out of a window onto a tree branch and hangs out there in the darkness while they're interrogating his wife.
Really?
And manages to escape. He eludes the would-be captors. So that group of soldiers was actually a detachment from William H. Boyd's patrol that was going through the valley there.
Oh, okay. All right.
But, anyway, he comes close, but no cigar. I know we were talking about cigars earlier, so
right.
We'll work on that later. But no cigar in this case. Boyd ends up with Milroy at Winchester.
Oh, okay.
And because of his capabilities, he's tasked by General Milroy himself with protecting the wagon train and giving it safe passage as far north as he can. And in a span of 7 days, even though his wife and his child are captured by Confederates outside of Berryville, he will escort this wagon train of 143 wagons all the way back to Harrisburg in less than a week.
Wow.
And so he is there by June the 20th, 1863. And now he's kind of sitting there twiddling his thumbs. And Governor Curtin is excited, as is Darius Nash Couch, that there is this capable intelligence officer, if you will, here. And so they send him back into the valley with 40 men from the Lincoln Cavalry. And he is the one who is encamped near Greencastle, Pennsylvania, when the vanguard of Lee's army shows up.
Okay.
And it's one of his troopers, Corporal William Reel, who is killed on June 22nd, just outside of Greencastle.
I know why the name Boyd sounded familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
That's that.
So he shows up in kind of these inconspicuous ways throughout the campaign. And if you read the official records, he's commended on a number of occasions by his superiors and by the people that interact with him. But in the meantime, I should also mention, being that he had adopted Pennsylvania as his native state, the Lincoln Cavalry had become the first New York cavalry.
Yeah. So how does that happen?
He's not happy about this because all the other companies came basically from the New York City area. And so he's trying to get back to a Pennsylvania regiment.
I gotcha.
And I think for him, the Pennsylvania campaign is this opportunity to showcase his skills with a small command so that maybe he can get that transfer.
Yeah.
And he does really well. He's providing information to Couch about the movements of Lee's army all the way up until they get, directly across the Susquehanna River. And then he gets news that Robert E. Lee's headquarters are near Cashtown, Pennsylvania. So on July 1st, he is given permission to leave the security of the fortifications at Harrisburg with a detail to try to capture Robert E. Lee.
How do they think that's going to happen?
I don't know, but somebody should write a book about this.
Yeah, really.
And so that morning, they make it to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, literally as Confederates are leaving, because, of course, Lee has now decided we've got to concentrate. The Union troops are a lot closer than we expected. They're pulling back, and Boyd is going to cut through the mountains with his detachment at Mount Holly Springs. And as a fellow neighbor, you'll appreciate this. They end up in Orangeville that afternoon.
Oh, nice.
And capture a number of Confederate wagons. So think about that. Orangeville to Cashtown.
Yeah.
Of course, Lee's headquarters are there that very morning.
Right.
He doesn't capture him, of course.
No.
Otherwise, you would have heard about that.
Yeah,
right.
but
think about that. He's behind Confederate lines and how gutsy this whole operation was with just a small contingent of troopers.
Yeah. Now, who's in Orangeville? Is it just wagons that they sent there, or is there actually
foraging wagons? Yes.
Yeah.
And per the accounts of the men that are with Boyd, there are Confederate cavalry troopers, which I think makes sense. It's probably some of Jenkins' guys. Yeah. There's a really funny scene where Boyd's deputy commander, a guy named Oliver Blackley Knowles, who's from a very prominent Philadelphia mercantile family, he gets surrounded by almost a dozen Confederates, and he's by himself, and they all tell him to drop his weapon, and he doesn't because he sees his friends coming up over the hillside. And these Confederates think he's absolutely crazy.
Right.
And then the tide turns and they capture the Confederates. But anyway, so they're kind of operating in the background there all the way back towards what is Pine Grove Furnace today. They have a little skirmish with some of Pickett's guys at Staufferstown, just outside of Chambersburg. And they're sending couriers back and forth to Harrisburg. This is what compels Baldy Smith's militia to move all the way down to Pine Grove Furnace, just as the Confederates are losing the battle. Of course, the militia aren't going to get engaged, but there's a number of fantastic, what if questions that go along with this story.
But you say that he was sent with a detail.
Yes.
How big is this detail?
So there are several different estimates that range anywhere from 40 up to 65 guys that he's got.
Oh, okay.
So it's basically like
bigger than I expected.
Yeah, it's about it's an undersized company.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking like 6.
Yeah.
I was like, man, that's pretty ballsy.
Yeah.
Yeah. 6 people.
Yeah.
But okay. So it's about maybe 40 to 60 men. That's not so bad. So that's really interesting though, is all of that other stuff. Like I never heard about a skirmish with Pickett's division.
Yeah.
But of course that would probably be happening all over the place, but it's so insignificant.
Yes. But what's most important for William H. Boyd is that because of the interactions he's having with colleagues, subordinates around him, people that are witnessing what he's doing during this campaign, it does land him his promotion and also a transfer into a Pennsylvania unit, which will become the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry. He is given commission as colonel of the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry.
Okay.
When the battle is over.
So now battle's over. Who gets the idea to make the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry?
So it's really the state. So they had all of these.
And you're trying to tell me that up to this point in the war, there's only been 20 cavalry regiments from Pennsylvania?
Not even.
Not even?
Yep. There have been 18.
18. So what happened in 19 and 20?
So 19 will be developed in the midst of the campaign, but won't actually achieve formation until later that fall, and they'll go west.
Okay.
Ask if you want to really stump somebody when it comes to Civil War history. Ask them what they know about the 19th Pennsylvania Cavalry.
I'm sure nothing.
I'm a Pennsylvania Cavalry guy. And
Yeah.
there's not much out there, but they do serve in the Western Theater. And then so the 20th, 21st, and 22nd Pennsylvania Cavalry, they are created out of the Pennsylvania campaign. So these are militia companies, basically, or independent cavalry companies that joined for the campaign, who are then recruited into these initially 6-month regiments and then 3-year regiments, as it will turn out. So
So they're formed, and what do? Do they keep them up around here, or do they send them with one of the armies?
Yes. So right off the bat, specifically for the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry, the entire regiment is sent towards Scranton, as we mentioned.
Yeah.
And William H. Boyd is not pleased by this. He's an initiative guy. He wants to be on the front. He wants to be engaging the enemy. So within 2 months, half of the regiment is sent back towards southern Pennsylvania. And Company B, Robert Bell's company, will actually be sent back here to Gettysburg to act as the provost guard in the aftermath of the battle.
Okay.
The other companies will be sent to Harper's Ferry, and they will link up with another favorite unit of mine, Cole's Maryland Cavalry, and they will be in the Shenandoah Valley operating against the guerrillas who are trying to snipe at Union supply lines.
And at this point, there's still 6-month men?
They're 6-month men, and they will find out by December that the governor wants to turn them into a 3-year or until the end of the war unit.
Is there any problem with that?
Yes. So let's specifically look at Robert Bell's company of cavalry here from the Gettysburg area. The initial recruits, when they say they want to serve and protect their homeland, they're bringing their personal Cadillacs from home. They're bringing their horses. And so when the re-enlistment takes place, number one, some of them have ridden their horses into the ground. Some of them are catching wind of this and saying, hey, I lost my horse, even though Aunt Jane actually has it hidden in the stable. But it becomes even more problematic because those that do keep their horses with them for that eventual 3-year enlistment in February of 1864 are going to find out really quickly that they're going to be converted from cavalry into infantry.
Oh, no.
And all the horses go back to the depot at Gettysburg Point.
Even if it's their own private horse?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. So some of these guys will spend a number of years after the war is over, if they've survived, trying to make a claim to get money for their horse.
Oh, so they didn't even say, we're keeping your horses, here's $20?
No. Nope.
Jeez.
Nope. And what's interesting, too, when you look at these regiments and all the bureaucratic documentation they go through, we have these clothing account books and things. Private so-and-so owed 75 cents for this pair of socks or whatever. There's not even any sort of trade that I can find. When you look back through those requisition forms and clothing and account booklets that do exist from the 21st, they're not giving these guys anything for trading their horse back into the federal government.
Did they have a high rate of desertion?
No. And I think part of that, Matt, is because, before that 3-year enlistment comes to fruition in February of 64, the entire regiment is stationed over at Chambersburg.
Okay.
So, 6 companies are from Franklin County, so they're basically at home.
Yeah.
And Company B will be ordered over to Chambersburg on Christmas Day, 1863. So, for the initial service, they've been close to home. And Robert Bell himself is one who, in his letters to his wife, says, I'm not gonna re-enlist. I've done my part. But he gets struck by lightning, figuratively.
Okay. I was going to say, literally?
Plot twist. He has this epiphany in late January 1864, and he doesn't really explain this other than it's based upon what other people in the Gettysburg community are saying about him and his reasons for fighting the war, whatever those reasons were. But he says in a letter to his wife, I can't let those nasty copperheads get their way, and I hope you can understand that I have to fight for my and our family reputation. So he decides to re-enlist. But it is an interesting point when we look at the numbers, and I've gone through the company rolls name by name. If you look at Pennsylvania's Bates's regimental histories, you'll have the 6-month 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry, and then you'll have the 3-year 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry, and they're listed separately. And the assumption is by people that do know about this unit that they had almost 4,000 recruits. But I went through and kind of cross-compared these muster records by company.
Wait. I'm sorry. They had almost 4,000 recruits over time.
Yes, because when you look at the 6-month regiment, the assumption is all of those guys left, and this is a brand new unit.
Right.
And it's not.
No, of course.
So what I found was that in total, between the 6-month unit and the 3-year unit, there were just under 2,000 total enlistees. So that means a lot of the guys that served in that 6-month unit re-enlisted to fight.
That's interesting. Were they ever, when they were, made, either when they were made the 21st 6-month or the 21st 3-year, were they ever at the full 1,000?
Not until it would have been in March of 1864. That's when they finally come back together as one solid body.
Okay.
And they're ordered to the Army of the Potomac.
Okay.
So William H. Boyd is excited about this because he gets to serve, back in the theater of operations with the Army in his perspective. But on their way south, that's when they find out the news that, hey, we're converting you into infantry. And the officers are writing letters to anybody they know saying, hey, how can you let this happen?
Right.
We're good at our job. Let us do our job.
Right.
And it doesn't work out. And so by May of 1864, they've lost all their cavalry equipment. They've lost their horses. And they are ordered to join the 5th Army Corps with Jacob Schweitzer's brigade.
As the 21st Pennsylvania Infantry, or are they still designated cavalry?
They
will,
will,
obviously they're not the 21st Infantry because they've already had that.
Yeah, they will always refer to themselves as the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry.
Okay.
But officers outside of that unit or outside of the brigade will refer to them as the 182nd Pennsylvania
182nd
or 182nd Regiment of the Line.
Okay.
So, and very, when it comes to their conversion to infantry, of course, they get very little training. They're already on the march south.
Right.
And so their first action is at a little place called Bethesda Church, not far from Cold Harbor. They had their rifles for less than 2 weeks, and their first officers killed there at Bethesda Church on May 30th, and then they are part of the larger 5th Corps attacks on June 1st and June 3rd, and they will lose heavily, like every other unit.
Yeah, right.
Yep. And one of those is William H. Boyd.
Oh.
Right off the bat.
Really?
Yep. He is leading a charge across this open field. He's got his pipe in his mouth. And
I like that. He's got style.
He's got style. This is what I love about this guy.
Yeah.
And they capture the first line of Confederate works, and then their brigade is unsupported. So they're kind of sitting out there in this no man's land, to say, firing back and forth. They're running out of ammunition. And Boyd is ordered to capture the second line of work. So he gets up on the fortification, pipe in his mouth, goes to take it out, and a bullet goes right through his throat, hits his vertebrae, goes downward, and lodges in the back of his spine.
Ooh.
And it reminds me a lot of the wounding of General Longstreet at the Wilderness. There was a surgeon who said this would have killed a normal man. But he's sitting there and he's smoking his pipe, and he won't be removed from the field until he knows what's happened to his boys, as he later writes.
So he's sitting there with a wound in his neck and spine.
Yep.
Yeah. Is he paralyzed?
He's not paralyzed entirely, I should say.
Okay.
We know he loses mobility, but unfortunately, the surgeon's affidavits that exist, they don't really give a lot of great detail. I know he was able to walk after the war. There's one affidavit that refers to losing.
So he survives.
Oh, yes, he's going to survive.
Wow.
Yep. It takes 6 years and 4 surgeries until they finally remove the ball from his neck after the war is over.
Oh my God.
But he's wrecked, and he's still trying to offer his services to the federal government even after this wound.
Really? Yeah, this guy, I could see why he's your hero.
Yeah, and he shows up at some kind of strange places, like he'll be in Hagerstown, commanding a small garrison there when Early makes his invasion northward in July of 1864. We're talking a month later, and he's like, "Let me fight,
Jesus.
let me in."
Balls of iron, this guy.
Yeah, yes, that's one way to put it. But yeah, so of course the story of the 21st will continue on. They're going to fight at several other battles, losing heavily. Some local Gettysburg boys are lost, including Henry Lott, who anybody that knows about Bell's scouts A lot of them know about Henry G. Lott. He was actually a scout with Meade here during the Pennsylvania campaign, and he'll end up in the Loudoun Valley scouting as the armies move south again. But he ends up being mortally wounded the third week of June, just outside of Petersburg.
Wow.
So, and Boyd has a very colorful story afterwards. So I think we can leave him there for now.
Yeah.
But
colorful meaning yellow and white?
Okay, well, let's just go into it.
Yeah, finish the story of Boyd.
All right.
Finish out his life.
So Boyd, after the war, gets an opportunity to become the basically federal marshal in Loudoun County, Virginia. And you can see where this is going off the bat, right? That's Mosby territory.
Yeah, right.
And Mosby knows this guy, and he's not a fan of this selection. So Mosby, understanding the rules of the proverbial road, challenges Boyd to a duel, hoping that Boyd will say yes. Now, of course, this isn't written anywhere, but he knows that if Boyd accepts as a federal agent, he'll be terminated from his job.
Sure, right.
And Boyd is wise, so he doesn't even entertain the conversation. But apparently, they have a little run-in outside of Warrenton, Virginia, in which
That's where Mosby's office was.
yes. Mosby actually challenges him again, and all that Boyd says in response is, "Colonel, I'd like to take you back to Pennsylvania and show you what a real cavalry officer looks like." And then, these two will start fighting it out with the pen and papers of the time. And
Probably
this goes
safer.
on. Yes.
Yeah.
This goes on for almost 6 months and makes national headlines until finally Boyd just decides, you know what? I've got more lucrative opportunities. I'm going back to the directories business, and he'll move to Washington, D.C. And continue his directory business. Very successful. But he doesn't live a long life. He's dead by 1887. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
But it was enough for him to plant the seed of what would become our phone books, which
Exactly
is amazing.
right. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That again, another thing that comes out of the Civil War.
Yes.
Or a Civil War person.
You can't evade it. Everything's connected to the Civil War.
It really is.
So
That's amazing to me. So wow. And I don't recall, but it's been so long since I've had to use a phone book. Was the name Boyd ever associated with in our lifetime?
Yeah. So when the first phone books start coming out in the early 20th century, Boyd's name is dropped. But when he's his company continues well into the 20th century. So anytime you see a directory, it still has Boyd's name.
Okay.
And actually, it was really cool when I began researching him. When you would go through these original editions of Boyd's directories, you'd usually see a lithograph picture of him in the front cover. So you could kind of track, and of course, by the latter part of the 19th century, there are actual photos of him too. So you kind of tracked how he's aging.
Yeah.
But yeah, when the phone books start coming out, they take on independent company names, and Boyd is dropped. But
he still is somehow involved with those independent. I mean, like he owns. Like, how does that work?
You mean as far as today?
Like, how does he make money? If everybody's going rogue?
I think by that time, in the competitive market, he had his personal business went to a nephew. And although the business continued, it was not nearly as successful as it previously had been.
Okay.
And eventually he sells to somebody else. And, they drop all the Boyd names. But as far as the family, they had done really well for themselves. And it just was not interesting to them anymore, I guess. And there was this new technology, so out the door we go, with an old invention comes a new invention too.
So let's go back now to June of 1863.
Okay.
It's the 26th.
Yeah.
And there's this guy, George Washington Sandow, and he's going to be killed. But he's not the first to be killed on the northern side, right? He's second.
So if you're referring to Corporal William Reel as the first?
Correct.
Yep. Who's also tied to William H. Boyd?
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. So, okay. So now... tell us the circumstances of so Company B. We're back to the June 26th time here. Company B, Bell's Cavalry.
Mm-hmm.
They're in and about the area.
Yes.
Early's division is coming in. They're coming in where, on the Mummersburg Road?
So initially they're coming on the Chambersburg Road, and then part of the Early's division will move out to the Mummersburg Road. As they're coming in,
Like via Hers Ridge Road or something.
What was the Black Gap Road, the Goldenville Road today?
Okay,
Yep.
okay. Oh, so further up.
Yep.
All right. And then, but White's Comanches, the 35th Virginia Cavalry Battalion, is going to come straight in on the Chambersburg Pike.
Yes.
And have a little fun in town.
Mm-hmm.
Where do Bell's guys meet them?
Yes. So initially, on the morning of the 26th, Robert Bell is tasked with showing the 26th Pennsylvania Emergency Militia where they are supposed to camp when they arrive. His men are out the Chambersburg Pike. They're out the Fairfield Road. They're actually on the mountain. And as the advance occurs, they'll start to pull back towards Marsh Creek.
Wait, he's showing the 26th.
He's showing the 26th where to camp.
Okay.
Colonel William
I don't know if
Jennings.
you said it or not, but in my head I heard you say 21st. So I just want to make sure.
Sorry. Yes, 26th.
You might not have.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it does happen to me.
The 26th is infantry.
Yes.
Yes.
And by the way, I do want to clarify something with that unit, if I may, for just a
Sure.
moment. The 26th often gets accused of just being these bluebird soldiers, and certainly they have a couple companies that are, for instance, from the seminary or what is Gettysburg College. But I also want to be very clear: there are some companies in that militia unit who had been in 9-month regiments.
Oh, okay. So they have experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm very sensitive to this because Company K is from my hometown of Millersburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And the captain of Company K, Marcus Novinger, was severely wounded at the Battle of Fredericksburg and is now back in the field with his ailing wounds trying to command these.
Okay.
Yeah, as are a number of other men that had served at battles like Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville.
So is it Company A that is the Gettysburg College guys and Gettysburg people in general, but it's mostly college guys? Is that right?
Correct. In that company, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a hodgepodge.
So they're the newbies.
Yes.
But it's not that there weren't veterans within
Correct.
the 26. Okay, that's interesting. I never knew that before. So
yeah. Anyway, I just had to throw it.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good.
Got to
I'm glad.
represent, right?
Yeah.
So Bell that morning after a very interesting journey for the 26th Emergency Militia, when they arrive in Gettysburg, Bell will escort them out to what is supposed to be their campsite just below what is today Whistler's Ridge. And as soon as they get out there, as Bell is showing the new digs to these folks, some of his men come riding in on the Chambersburg Pike and say, there are enemy troopers that are pursuing us. And Bell basically says, pardon me, I need to go out here and check out what this is all about. So as the 26th is setting up, Bell, in fact, goes out there and does confirm that a large body of Confederate troops are headed towards Gettysburg. He doesn't identify them as cavalry or infantry. We know later, of course, it's probably White's Comanches that they're seeing debouching from the mountain passes. But anyway, he comes back, and very early on, Colonel Jennings of the 26th expresses that he has no confidence in his men, and they decide to settle on an extrication route or an evacuation route. And it's determined that the 26th Pennsylvania Emergency Militia will move to the northeast towards the Black Gap Road to try to escape towards Harrisburg if that moment arrives. And it likely will, because Colonel Jennings didn't feel comfortable. And that Company B of the 21st, which is not that yet, they're still the Adams County Scouts, will retire through Gettysburg to notify the local civilians, hey, the Confederates are in fact headed into town.
Okay. So Bell's going back there to warn people.
Yes.
It's not any act of cowardice or anything like that.
Correct. At least not on my watch.
All right.
No, there are good accounts in which they determine, what the roles of these individuals are going to be. And Bell's the hometown guy.
Right.
Granville Haller had skedaddled pretty early on.
Yeah.
He's an interesting character as well, if anybody's interested in more research. But anyway, so that moment does arrive. It's just after about the noon hour, And Robert Bell will order his company back through Gettysburg. They start warning civilians. And then he tells his troopers, every man for himself. We do know that they established a rendezvous point in Hanover, Pennsylvania, because some of those troopers will follow Bell. Some of them will end up there later on. But in the case of George Washington Sandeau and William Lightner, who are from Mountjoy Township, when they get to the bridge that goes across Rock Creek, those two decide to turn southward and head towards home and hopefully safety.
Right. Mountjoy is south of Gettysburg.
Correct. Yeah, down along the Taneytown Road.
Yeah. And so they're trying to go that way. So what they're coming through. So what, let's go again. So Bell's guys are moving out the York Road.
Correct.
And these guys say, no, let's go back home. So they cut south. I guess through what would be Culp's Hill
Correct.
area today?
Yes, exactly
Okay.
right. Yeah, so I should say Bell's guys, because remember their rendezvous point is Hanover, so they're going out York Street, and then they'll stay straight at that intersection and go out the Hanover Road.
Hanover Road,
Yep.
okay. So.
And right there at the base of the hill, not far from where Ewell's headquarters marker is today, is about where they'll Lightner and Sandeau will turn south or to the right and head towards Culp's Hill. Yep, they're going right through there.
And so they're heading that way. They're going in kind of a southwesterly direction at that point,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But so how is it that Sandeau gets killed where their monument is today?
Sure.
Southwestish of Culp's Hill.
Sure. So, of course, it's always dangerous to try to make assumptions about why these people are doing what they're doing.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
But with the information we have, it seems likely that they're simply trying to conceal their movements and take the most direct route back to the Taneytown Road. You know, unfortunately, we don't know where their route was going to lead them after the incident occurred, but they're going to come out near what was a very popular area south of Culp's Hill at the time, which was the local swimming hole at McAllister's Dam.
Ah, okay.
And it's a convenient place for them to regain the Baltimore Pike. You know, and whether they were going to continue south or maybe take the Blacksmith Shop Road to get over the Taneytown Road, who knows? But as they're coming out, a party of White's Comanches are coming south along the Baltimore Pike, and they spot these two riders. We don't even know if Lightner and Sandeau were in uniform at that point. We know they had weapons, but we don't know if they're something clearly tipped off those Confederate soldiers that these are combatants. Maybe it's as simple as they're riding in and they shout at the party of two, surrender, or they see the arms, throw down your weapons. Maybe that's it. And they don't. And by that point, Lightner and Sandeau are right at the fence along the Baltimore Pike across from Powers Hill. And Lightner's horse, by two accounts, takes the fence, gets into the pike, and continues south. And Sandeau's horse won't jump the fence. And in an act of defense, he draws his revolver, possibly for the first time, and fires off a shot and doesn't hit the target. And within moments, a Confederate trooper has leveled their weapon and he's out of the saddle.
Wow.
You know, I do think Sandeau's human story is very, very, very fascinating to me because of really how ordinary he was in the extraordinary circumstances he found himself.
Yeah.
One of my pet peeves when it comes to talking about the Sandeau story is people will focus on the monument. They'll simply say, this is the first guy killed on the Gettysburg battlefield before the actual battle happened. It's like, well, sort of, but he's a human being.
Right,
you know?
right.
He's just a young guy.
How old was he?
So Sandeau at that time would be 20 years old. And
he's a boy.
Yeah, he'd only been married for 4 months.
Yeah.
He and his wife had just had a newborn boy 3 weeks before. So he's
How many months was he married for?
4 months.
Ooh,
The math.
George.
You noticed it. It's funny. So many times I say that and people are like, oh, they don't think the second time. Yeah.
Naughty, George.
Yeah. But you know, really much just beginning to embark on his life as an adult.
Yeah.
and finds himself caught up in these circumstances.
And all because his horse wouldn't jump the
All
wall.
because his horse wouldn't jump the fence.
Stupid
by several
horse.
accounts, yes. It's always the horse's
It
fault.
is
I
always
agree
the
with you.
horse's fault.
You know, people tell me it's all about the rider's confidence, and I've ridden some horses, and my confidence was just fine. And
Yeah.
sometimes they just don't do it.
They just don't want to do it. I used to ride all the time.
Yeah.
And I was very confident.
Yeah.
And I usually got the horse to do what I wanted it to do. But there were days where you would get a horse and he's just like, no.
Sometimes the horse can't handle us, you know.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
No, I know. And that's the most frustrating thing is when you can't get the horse to do what, and everybody else's did it fine.
Yeah.
You know, you feel like a loser.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but yeah, the horse is
That's
its
happened to
own
me too.
living, breathing creature.
Yes.
So it's going to do what it wants to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you know, speaking of horses, we know that maybe this is fitting. The horse ends up being captured then. So because the
Well,
Confederates-
that's what White's guys are after, right?
Yes.
They're after horses. They're not trying to kill people.
exactly.
They're just trying to get horses
As far
and
as we
everything
know,
else
man.
that they
As
go.
far as we
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yep.
so while Sando and Leitner are, you know, kind of making their escape, thinking that they're being smart and taking the route they're taking, skirting the town basically.
Yep.
And they don't realize that some of White's guys have, you know, they all split up, I guess, when they got to the square. Is that the idea?
Yes.
And then some of them went south.
Yep.
And they just happened to.
I'm sure they fanned out all over the place because with any body of troops that's moving like that, they've got to protect their flanks. And as you
Right.
mentioned, very important, they're after supplies. They're on a grocery run. Anything
Right.
they can use of military value, they want to bring it into the fold. So, and
Now, wasn't there a point? I'm sorry. Wasn't there a point though where they were chasing Bell himself?
I have never found, I mean, outside of that initial encounter, I have never found anything that speaks specifically to Bell being chased down, you know, after they had split. But it's possible. I
Well,
don't know.
no. This I think might have been before, and it might have been Bell and a couple of other guys.
Yeah.
I want to say Sarah King is the civilian.
Okay.
And her house was where Lee's buffet is now.
Okay. Yeah.
And she watched it,
And
I think.
so Sarah King would certainly be tied in to the Bells. And I'm trying to remember. I'm going to get this wrong now, but Captain Bell's wife is Abigail King. So I don't know if they're
Sisters,
cousins.
cousins, yeah.
Yeah.
All
But,
right.
yeah. Interesting.
That is interesting. I
Now
didn't
you
know
gave me
that.
something to look up. So thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
I want, but so I think I saw that in one of those civilian books, and I remember Tim Smith told me a while ago. He goes, "Well, the problem with that book is the authors originally were going to write a fiction. They were going to write a novel,
Yeah.
and they came to me for the history, and then along the way they said, well, we're changing it now to a history,
Yeah.
but they left some of the novelization in."
Sure.
And he goes, so you got to be careful what you believe out of that book.
Never let the facts come in the way of a better story.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So let's run with it. Robert Bell was chased out of town.
By some of Bell's men
Yeah.
who had 4 or 5 hats, brand new hats stacked on top of their heads,
Right.
women's dresses slung over their shoulders, and blankets on their laps.
Yeah. No, but yeah, seriously, I'll have to go back and check that out. That's, you never know. It could be.
I don't know, but yeah, it's something worth looking into, I guess.
Yeah. So the other thing too is the best civilian accounts that we have of what happened, of course, are not from civilians who actually witnessed Sando fall. It's when those Confederates lead Sando's horse back up the Baltimore Pike into Gettysburg. Catherine Thorne, Elizabeth Thorne, is one of those who gives an account about running into these Confederates who had taken the horse of somebody they had just killed. There's a gentleman in Gettysburg who at the time is 17 years old who writes about how they came in and they were bragging about how they had to kill a Union soldier, which, you know, makes me inclined to believe that maybe he was in a uniform. I don't know.
Yeah.
But none of them had actually witnessed the event itself. So you got to take it all with a grain of salt, I guess, is what I would say. But with the different sources that are available, this seems to make the most sense. What we do know is that after he's killed, Mr. McAllister, who is, of course, a staunch abolitionist who owned the mill, he's the one that comes across Sando's body and initially misidentifies him as a gentleman named Hartman. And then some other civilians come along them as he loads Sando's remains into his spring wagon and says, no, this is George Washington Sando. And then they convey the remains southward to Mountjoy Township. but, not the first member of the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry to die or fall, because they're not the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry yet.
Right.
But certainly...
And those other units are elsewhere.
Yes.
And so are they getting into any kind of trouble too?
They are. Nobody that dies as a result of combat wounds or anything, at least not at that stage.
Okay.
There are several soldiers that will die in northeastern Pennsylvania being assailed or shot by some of these protesters or rioters, but no combat deaths. He's the first combat death, and they'll adopt him as their own because he was with what becomes Company B.
Sure. Now the two monuments there. Why are there two?
Yeah. So the one that's got the round top with the horse's head on it, that is the state of Pennsylvania, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania monument to the 21st. The one that's a little bit further to the south is the regimental monument. And so this fits very well into the conversation we're having about the unit's identity and when they formed.
Mm-hmm.
Because when the first proposal was made to build a monument to the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry, Robert Bell was the president of the Veterans Organization, and they submitted to the GBMA and then to the War Department, hey, this is what we want to do. Here's our plan. Here's our proposal. And the War Department could not find any records of the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry having served in the Gettysburg campaign.
Oh, right, because it wasn't
they
the 21st.
Didn't exist.
Yeah, okay.
So this battle goes back and forth for a number of years, and the veterans continue to have reunions. And, there are a number of other kind of what we would call maybe minor stipulations that were, with many monuments on the battlefield, overcome or kind of laughed at, and the veterans said, we're going to do what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry Veterans Association, they wanted to honor where Sando died. They also wanted to honor William H. Boyd and Oliver Knowles, who was their last colonel, which, of course, at that time, you can't honor one individual through depiction.
Right.
So they buy a small plot of ground. This is in 1893, to the south of where the state monument is today.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, forget the War Department. We're going to put our own darn monument up, and they're going to deal with it. And so that is the first monument that goes up. That's the one that people visit less, probably. Right. It's kind of up there on the hillside of the woods.
Right. Setback.
Yeah. But in the meantime, while they're deciding how the ceremonies are going to play out for the monument dedication, word comes in from the War Department that, hey, in fact, we have found records that prove that these companies existed at the time of the Gettysburg campaign. We now approve your proposal, and now you can get your grant, $1,500 from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to build a state monument.
Okay.
So what's really cool is, and I have this imperial albumen from 1893 that shows the veterans, including Robert Bell, all sitting at their proposed state monument site. But the monument's not there because this was still in limbo at that time. And then they will come back the following year and dedicate not one, but two monuments.
Okay.
So they got their reunion photo taken at that Regimental Association monument, not at the Commonwealth monument.
So that for those of you who might be new to all this and you're like, what the hell is he talking about? State monument, regimental monument. I thought they're both regimental monuments. They are, but one is put up by the state or with funds from the state, right?
Correct. Yep.
The veterans will be given funds from the state to put something up. But the veterans could also pool their money and put their own thing up.
Correct.
And so that's why you see a lot of regiments that have two monuments.
Yep.
One of the reasons why you see regiments have two monuments, not the only reason.
Yep.
Yeah.
And has to a degree over the years maybe caused a lot of questions from people, is the one we talked about earlier. The 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry is not here at Gettysburg. Why were they guarding supplies, whatever? No, it's just their association before the battle actually occurred to Robert Bell's cavalry company that compels them to place their monument here at Gettysburg.
So the battle is underway. The main armies are fighting.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are still scattered about in different places. What happens to Company B?
Yeah, so those guys that will reunite with Bell end up in Hanover, and then they'll go to York, Pennsylvania, and they are there when Gordon's brigade continues to push east all the way to the Susquehanna River. And it's actually a member of what becomes the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry who helps to set the bridge on fire at Wrightsville and Columbia. And forever after, by the vets, he's known as the bridge burner. He shows up at reunions. It's pretty awesome. But so they're there in Columbia for almost a week before they're called to Harrisburg with these other companies to reunite at Camp Couch, and that's when they will form the 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
So I know it's kind of a circuitous route, but they're all kind of operating parallel.
So it's fascinating, and it's just a small story, but it can give you an idea of just how big this was.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us tend to think of it as just the armies, the main bodies of the armies. I think we also tend to think of it as only the units depicted in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's so many more. And there's so many ancillary units that are doing things in support of the army all around.
Yep.
And, so I think it's interesting just on that level there that it just kind of shows you that there's a lot more to the story than what you're used to hearing. Mm-hmm. And this is why people said to me when I started doing this, like, how long can you do a show about a 3-day battle? Yeah. And I'm like, the rest of my life. It's like there's 150,000-ish men who fought here. That means there's potentially 150,000 stories to tell. Yeah. And every time I start thinking, I think I don't know what I can do anymore, then we do a show like this, and you find out it just makes you, it reinvigorates you. You know,
that's why we're here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And we have to reinvigorate ourselves every once in a while too, and find that little thing goes, oh, that's pretty cool.
Sure.
Yeah. I think, though, this is a good spot to leave it, though, because I don't want to tell the whole story because I want the audience to buy the books. Let me see the cover one more time here. The idea here, folks, is to read books and learn it for yourself. 21st Pennsylvania Cavalry by Britt Isenberg. Britt is actually his name. It's not short for anything. I asked him beforehand. A lot of you were probably wondering, is it Britain? Nope, it's just Britt. Charles is his middle name.
I have been called many things, though.
I'm sure you have.
Thank you, Matt.
That's it for us here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching. Britt, thank you for coming on.
My
and
pleasure.
then next time you're going to come on, we're going to talk about Buford's Division.
Okay.
He's a big Buford's Division nerd, so we're going to talk a lot about them and what they did here at the Battle of Gettysburg. Maybe more. Who knows? We'll find out. That's it for us here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Alrighty. Good. All right. So let me just mute us there because thanks everybody for watching. All 2 of you. Grant, this is a great topic that is not mentioned often. Yeah, no kidding, Grant. Grant and I bust balls. He's the one who wonders how long it will take for you to move.
This is awesome. I'm very excited now.
No, this was fun. It was nice. It's nice to meet you finally.
A pleasure.